What is good, everybody? Welcome into the Classic Polasek podcast. We are here, and it is August the 30th. And yes, it is the eve of the official college football season. Yes, we've had some games, but the official first Saturday of college football, besides Florida and Miami last week, which doesn't really count. And then the week before, and within the 24-hour mark, there will be cuts made in the NFL based upon the preseason cuts. And then we get going. Next week is the first week of actual NFL football, and so obviously looking forward to that. Today we're going to make some picks as far as who I think is going to win each division in the NFL, as well as the Super Bowl. So this all has to do with we pick games against the spread each week, and these are pretty big because for each division winner you get right, which I got every single one right last year. Besides maybe one. I'd have to look back. I might have gone perfect. But they're 4 points apiece, and then they're 20 points for the Super Bowl winner. And so obviously each game that we pick against the spread's 1 point. There are some things that we'll sprinkle in throughout the year that I'll explain to you next week whenever we go into picking games. But this week, just wanted to go through. We have the odds. We have what the experts, quote-unquote experts, think. And then I'll let you know what I think because it's a lot of fun to do this, clearly. And so you guys leave your feedback. If you guys are new here, if you're on the Facebook page, please do drop a like. Would appreciate that. I'm glad that you guys stick around to hang out and check out the new podcast. And also, if you're over on YouTube, we're going to make a goal by the end of this season to get to 100 subscribers on YouTube. 100. We have 240 likes on Facebook, but Facebook makes it to where I can invite friends. And so if you guys see this video, you want to share it around to people, make sure that they subscribe on YouTube. That would help me out a lot. It would be really cool to get to that 100 subscriber mark by the end of this season. And then so from there, we can try and grow the channel and do some more things like that. If you guys have some video requests or things that you want me to do during the podcast, please do let me know as well. And we're trying to find an audio outlet to where people can just listen if they're on the commute, or they just want to, if they're mowing the lawn or whatever, and they want to listen to the podcast. If you guys have some suggestions, hit me up down there in the comments down below. I know of some good ones, but some of them aren't free. So if you know of some free ones, that's really preferred. But right now we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, so really appreciate you guys tuning into this podcast as we are, like I said, 1 day away from the official college football season starting, and then 1 week away from the NFL season starting. So we'll talk some of that, and like I said, we'll pick division winners and a Super Bowl winner to wrap up today's episode. But I want to start with this, and I know that people kind of worn out this storyline, and it happened right after I got off the podcast last week. But Andrew Luck announcing his retirement from the NFL, and he is, he's that type of guy where, the Colts were in position to win their division. They were odds-on favorite to win their division. Then they went to dead last. And I know a lot of guys, you can put them in the same situation. If a team lost their quarterback, probably 25 of the 32 teams would be heavily, heavily, heavily undermanned at that point. Your backup quarterback is just, he's not your starter. I mean, yes, that is Captain Obvious, right? But you have one of those things where you're not prepared for somebody to step away 2 weeks before the season. And so Jacoby Brissett is going to have to step in for the Colts. And, clearly I don't think they're going to win that division. I'll give you that spoiler right now. For the AFC South, I just don't think that they get it done. But it's one of those things that, it's really unfortunate. At his age, where he's a married man, he is a father, and so he wants to step out of the game because he's been in rehab, and he's been getting back on the field and getting hurt again. And I can't imagine putting my body out on the line, essentially taking 30, 35 hits, 40 hits per game. I know quarterbacks maybe don't take that many, but they take the biggest blows because a lot of times sacks are super violent. Sacks are incredibly violent whenever you have a guy coming free off the end or a linebacker blitzing and just plow you into the ground. So I don't necessarily think that he is making a terrible decision because I think it's absolutely the best decision for him. what he does, and wanting to live a healthy life, and wanting to see his kids graduate from high school and from college and get married and live a healthy life to where he's not a vegetable by the time he's 40. And so, as weird as that sounds, I applaud Andrew Luck for doing what he's done. I know it stinks for the Colts, but the Colts have reciprocated some love by not making Andrew Luck pay back that $24.8 million, I believe it was, that he owed them for leaving. And they said, you can keep it. And that shows just truly what he meant to that organization and what, impact he's left. He'll be, in my opinion, he'll be in the Ring of Honor for the Colts. And then the discussion that I want to have today a little bit before we scoot on is, do you think that Andrew Luck will be a Hall of Famer? So Andrew Luck's stats, let me pull up here online. And you guys can let me know down below if you think that he is a Hall of Famer or not. He only played 6 seasons total, and obviously one of those seasons he only played 7 games. So in 86 games started, he went 53-33. He had 2,000 completions on 3,200 attempts, which is good for a 60.8 completion percentage. Threw for 23,671 yards, 171 touchdowns, including in 2014 he threw 40 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. So 83 interceptions in his career, so 171 into 83. Essentially, you're 2-to-1 for him. And he was the type of guy that, per attempt down the field, 7.1 yards per attempt, and a quarterback rating all time for him at 89.7, or 89.5, I should say. So my question is to you, if you're sitting there, immediate reaction, as soon as I say, is Andrew Luck a Hall of Famer? Your immediate answer is yes or no. Let me know down below, because I'm interested. I would personally say yes, simply because of the fact that he was looked at as the highest, the biggest draft pick since John Elway. A lot of people said that he could be arguably one of the greatest of all time, and probably if he played another 6, 7, 10 years, he could be. But because people are getting out of the league sooner, I don't necessarily think that that's his fault or it will play a factor into the Hall of Fame. But if you think about it, in 6 seasons, he threw for 23,000 yards and over 140 touchdowns. And so for me, I think he personally is a Hall of Famer. But please do let me know your thoughts below. I do think he made the right decision by getting out of football and just allowing himself to live a free life. Yes, a lot of people would say do it for the money, do it for the generational money, to where his great-great-grandkids don't have to worry about, if they even have to work, really, because it is a generational amount of money. But I know that he thinks that he probably has enough money in the bank to where he can live a happy life now and still can be generational money for his family and kind of lay that roadmap for generations to come in the Luck family. So I do applaud him. I think people, they harshly criticized him, Doug Gottlieb being one of them. And to me, I don't think, for a guy who played college basketball at Oklahoma State like Doug Gottlieb did, he cannot speak upon NFL football as far as what somebody should do with their body and what they shouldn't do. And so Troy Aikman came to Andrew Luck's defense in that, and they're colleagues at Fox, which is interesting. Troy Aikman and Doug Gottlieb are. But one of those things where it caused a lot of controversy as far as people and what they thought. And clearly, I think he's making the right decision just by living his life, doing what's best for him and his family at this point. And so I would not be shocked if Andrew Luck is one of those guys that, a year down the line is on one of your TV screens at Fox or CBS or NBC or whatever, doing pregame, doing some Thursday night, maybe color commentary. He's one of those guys where he's probably like Tony Romo in the fact of he's so intellectual. He's seen the game. in a modern day. And so I would be interested to see how Andrew Luck would be in the booth. There's no reports out there right now of anybody doing that for him, but I would not doubt if we found out here in the next year or so if Andrew Luck was even up for a position. ESPN is, is grasping at straws right now for their color commentary. And so I think that he could fit well into that system. Just depends upon who they got to go with him on the play-by-play side. So let me know down below, do you think Andrew Luck would be a good commentator? Thought about that a little bit, and I really do think that he could do some damage. The type of guy that he's seen the game from the vantage point that not a lot of people in the world get to see. And so that's why I think a lot of people like Tony Romo is he knows what's happening before it happens. And so I think Andrew Luck could be similar, maybe not as good of delivery as Tony Romo, but would be a lot of fun to see how he would do in the booth. So Andrew Luck moves on. The Colts go from essentially the favorites to going to the bottom of the bucket. So I'll show you, courtesy of, this is Pro Football Reference for Andrew Luck stats, and then we scoot over to sportsbettingdime.com for the updated odds at the divisional winners. And so right now, if we look at the AFC South, we'll start there because here's your Indianapolis Colts, your plus 125 going into April 2nd, pretty standard through preseason. Then their major favorites at minus 110 on July 18th. And then their announcement happens, and August 26th, they're plus 400 now to win their division. And so for people who are new or don't understand what plus 400 means, if you bet $100 on the Colts to win the division, you would get 400 in addition to your 100 back. So essentially 100 in, you get your 500 out. And so if you're looking on the screen with me here, if you're joining me on Facebook or YouTube, how we're looking at this is you got your Colts here, Tennessee Titans, Jacksonville Jaguars, and your Houston Texans. Currently the Texans are the current favorites, but the Jaguars have made dramatic improvements as far as in the odds. So we'll start with them on the AFC South. I think this is going to be a great division. I wish Andrew Luck was still around to kind of spice that up a little bit because it would have been a very difficult division for the Colts to lose. I think that even though there's some talented teams like the Texans and the Jags, I think this was the Colts' year to possibly go to an AFC Championship game, and then you'd meet the Chiefs, essentially, at that point. But one of those things where he goes out, they go to last, and now they start to rebuild. So I think the Colts are a non-factor, unfortunately. Really stinks for them because I did want to see them play well. But this is a tighter division. The top two teams, the Jags and the Texans, are within $20 of each other as far as the Texans are the favorites at plus 180, but then you have the Jags at plus 200. So you go into a sports book, you put in $100 on the Texans, and if they win it, you get your 100 plus the 180 back. So for me, the AFC South is a toss-up. I do believe the Jags are a great team, but I do believe that Deshaun Watson is the biggest difference maker in that division now that Andrew Luck is gone. And so with J.J. Watt being healthy and possibly being able to lead his team on defense, don't know what they're going to do with Jadeveon Clowney, but looks like they might move on from him and get a left tackle from Miami. I don't know if those have been squashed yet, but if they get a left tackle for Deshaun Watson and they can protect him a little bit more, maybe take the Colts guideline from, they went from worst to first in the NFL as far as sacks allowed in like 2 years. If the Texans can follow that guideline, they'll be up there in contention. But I think this year the Texans do get the job done. I'm going to mark the AFC South down to the Houston Texans. And, we'll go over obviously we'll go through their games this year against the spread, but they're the type of team that could get to 10 wins. 10-6 I think is attainable for the Texans, and I think the Jaguars are right there at like 9-7. I think Nick Foles is kind of the wild card where, okay, does he play well enough to get them to the playoffs? And so we'll see on that. The Jags certainly interesting in that division. So let's stay in the AFC. Let's go to the AFC East. And so this is kind of one of those things where I don't know. You take your pick. The Patriots have had a stranglehold on this division for years and years and years. You can see here, this is the minus 500 line. And so what minus 500 means is that you would have to pay $500 to get $100 back. The Patriots are still extremely heavy favorites. They went down a little bit after Gronk retired. They're at minus 475. The New York Jets are the nearest team at 570, plus 570, so that big of a gap there, almost $1,000 difference in their opinion. Then you have the Bills at plus 940, and then you have your Miami Dolphins dead last at plus 2,900. So, the Dolphins, pretty much non-factors. This one's, I would say, the easiest division to pick in my opinion. I don't think the Jets are ready yet. Maybe 1 or 2 more years before Sam Darnold can get that squad going. I don't think the Bills are quite ready yet either with Josh Allen. So young quarterbacks, and Tom Brady's still in the league, and they've picked up Demaryius Thomas. They have N'Keal Harry now. Obviously they lost Gronk, so we'll see how that works. But they still have Edelman, still have Brady. And so I think they have enough to get it done in the AFC East. So far, going with the 2 favorites. I guarantee you I do not go probably all favorites here, just because, in the past 20 years, there have been 4 new playoff teams each year. And so, to say that 4 of the playoff teams from last year would not be in it this year would seem a little crazy, but it's true. So we'll see kind of where that gravitates towards as we go along. But the AFC North is where I'm going to go next, and they are the tightest division with 3 teams in the running to win it. If you're looking here on the graph with me, you have the Cleveland Browns are the current favorite at plus 140. The Steelers are right behind them at plus 160, and then the Ravens are plus 290, and then obviously the Bengals, losing A.J. Green for a little while, are at plus 2,200, and you can see on their graph here, since last offseason have gone down and then continued to go down from there. So one of those things where this is a toss-up. A lot of people are picking the Cleveland Browns to win this division. Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be good again. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think James Washington has a gigantic year. So one of those things where I'm tempted with the Steelers, but I'm going to go out there with an oddball because I kind of have to do this each year. I do think the Browns are going to be good and competitive, but I think they need one more year. So I'm going to go with the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC North. This is probably the one where you guys are going to be like, what in the world are you thinking? But Lamar Jackson is, yes, there's people that have tape on him now, but it's one of those things where they got better. They got Hollywood Brown from Oklahoma. They got a couple guys, Mark Andrews at tight end. I think they're the type of team that, because of time of possession, because they run the ball so much, and because then people will put 8-9 people in the box, then Lamar Jackson can throw the ball down the field, and I think that can be a big difference. So in this division where you don't know what you're going to get with the Browns, you lost a lot of drama from the Steelers, so I think that's why a lot of people are picking them up there. But I think Big Ben maybe takes a step back, closer to retirement, and I think the Ravens have enough what it takes to win that AFC North. So that's who I'm going with in the North. We have the AFC West now, and I think this is a pretty clear-cut decision. You have some good teams in this division, but if you're looking at the graph here, the Raiders are plus 1,600. The Broncos are plus 1,300 with Joe Flacco. The Chargers are plus 175, which they had a great season last year. And then the Kansas City Chiefs are minus 160. It's one of those things where you have the reigning MVP. Tyreek Hill got out scot-free, that's great for them. And then you have Travis Kelce. That defense got better. They're going to implement a new scheme on defense. So it might be similar to last year where they have to score points. But, if they can go from 31st in the NFL to maybe 20th in the NFL, I think the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl and good enough to go to the Super Bowl. So in the AFC West, I'm going to go the Kansas City Chiefs. if you gave me just about any set of skill players with Patrick Mahomes, I think it'd be tough to pick against him. Obviously, coming off the season that he had last year. So, Kansas City gets my nod in the AFC West. Now, by the way, the Super Bowl favorites for me will come up here at the very end. And as far as who I pick for the Super Bowl, I still have no idea. I'm going through these, and I'm like, okay, that's a Super Bowl team, or that could be a Super Bowl team. So for me, we'll see. It's one of those things where the Super Bowl is a tough thing to pick. And last year, I picked the Saints to go to the Super Bowl. They went to the NFC Championship game and obviously got what a lot of people would say the worst call of interference of all time against the Rams, and so they're still licking their wounds on that, and clearly I am as well. Luckily, I did win last year as far as our picks go, but one of those things where I just feel like they should have been there. So we go to the NFC, and we start with the NFC East. And yes, the Dallas Cowboys. A lot of people wondering what I think about Zeke Elliott and the holdout. Jerry Jones came out today and said he thinks that Zeke will miss games in the regular season. Okay. To open up the season, the Cowboys have the easiest schedule in the NFL. So if you're telling me for 3 games, the first 3 games, say Zeke signs in week 4, you can go to, let's see, you have the Giants, the Redskins, and then you're at the Dolphins. 3 teams that are not expected to be very good this year. If you're looking at the odds here, the Redskins are plus 1,100, Giants are plus 1,300. They're with makeshift quarterbacks. Eli Manning's on his way out. Daniel Jones is not going to play well if he does end up starting at some point this year. Dwayne Haskins will struggle if he ends up playing for the Redskins. So it's really down to the Cowboys and the Eagles. And the Eagles have made a dramatic improvement in the past month as far as favorites to win the division. If you give me the easiest schedule, essentially, and I know the Eagles play the same Redskins and the same Giants, but as far as early on in the season, and then you get a fresh Zeke a couple games in, I'm going to go the Cowboys again. I know people are going to call me a homer, and that's fine. But until I'm proven wrong, that's totally fine. They won the division last year. I picked them last year. So I probably should pick against them this year because they don't tend to repeat very well. But I do believe that the Cowboys with Zeke Elliott and that defense, Van Der Esch and Jalen Smith, they're improving at the corner, improving at the safety. I do think that they get the job done. They might get Travis Frederick back this year, clearly from that illness. So it centers, so the offensive line improves. So give me the Cowboys in the NFC East, even though the Eagles are fairly heavy favorites. And if I went there's your non-favorite for you too, plus 160, 1.6 to 1 on your money there. So I'm not sure that I would actually make the physical bet on that, but we get to another very, very tight division, and that's the NFC North, where you have kind of the Vikings, Packers, and Bears all floating around. You can see on this chart here, thanks to sportsbettingdime.com, is the Detroit Lions are plus 1,200 all the way down here. And then you have 3 teams essentially tied. You have your Packers are at plus 200. So they are tied with the same odds as the Minnesota Vikings. And then the Bears are plus 170. So you have 3 teams that are very good. The Vikings get Dalvin Cook back. The Packers got better on defense out of the draft. And then the Bears are just good. I mean, they have the best defense in the NFL. And can Mitchell Trubisky do enough to keep the Bears around? This is a tricky one because a lot of people want to go Aaron Rodgers, and the Minnesota Vikings are also right there. The Bears look good. I mean, this is the toughest division so far to pick. I think the along with the AFC North was very, very tough with the Ravens that I picked against the Browns and the Steelers. But this is super tight, and this is kind of one of those, okay, what are the other guys going to pick type deal. But I do believe with the running game, getting to play indoors for their home games, and no, I'm not talking about the Lions, I will pick the Minnesota Vikings to win the NFC North. very tough division. But I can believe that the Vikings would be one of those 4 teams that didn't make the playoffs last year, could make the playoffs. Kirk Cousins can do enough with that running game, with the good receivers, if they can shore up at offensive line a little bit. I like the Vikings to win the NFC North, and that's kind of a hot take there, but I will go with that because I like that pick. I really do. It's kind of a tough one there, but I do like it. So then you get to the NFC South, and a lot of people are on board still with the New Orleans Saints for good reason. Should have been a Super Bowl team last year. Kind of got, screwed out of that one a little bit. So, you have your Falcons, your Panthers, your Buccaneers. Just one of those things where, if I was actually betting, I would actually think maybe down the line of one of these other teams. But I think the Saints are good enough to win this division again. Also, I'm second-guessing myself here. I like how Christian McCaffrey has looked. Christian McCaffrey, I think, is the type of guy that's a difference maker. He's up there in the top couple of picks with Saquon Barkley in fantasy drafts. And so I am torn between the Panthers and the Saints this year. I think once Drew Brees retires, it's the Panthers division. But for now, I will go the Saints in the NFC South. So let's see. We have the Saints. I do think that that's maybe where the Panthers. Let me sit here and say the Panthers will be a wild card team. I do want to mark these down so I can go through playoffs later on. And I do think that the Chargers are a playoff team. And I do think that the Browns are a playoff team. So these are those 3 right there. Panthers, Chargers, Browns. I'm not picking them to win their division. I am picking them to get to the wild card round and have to play. So then that leaves us with one division left, and we still have one wild card to pick as well. And it could very well come out of this division here, which is the NFC West. Clearly, the Rams coming off a Super Bowl season that they lost to Tom Brady. You have your Rams, your Seahawks at plus 310, 49ers are plus 420, and then you have the Arizona Cardinals way down there with Kyler Murray. They're probably a few years off, but with these 3 teams up top, you get Jimmy G back. With the 49ers, you have Russell Wilson, who's played really, really well in his career, and I do think that they have a bounce-back season, and I do think that the Rams are a very good team, and they have steadily, as you can see on this graph, they have stayed at that minus 180 there for a while. So in the West, I do think that the Rams win it again, and I do think that the Seahawks make the playoffs. So if I'm going with this particular format, I think the home field advantage out of those division winners could be. Oh man! So let's see. To recap: NFC West, the Rams; NFC North, Vikings; NFC South, Saints; NFC East, Cowboys. 2 wildcard teams: Seahawks and Panthers. In the AFC, I have the Chiefs winning the West, the Ravens winning the North, Texans winning the South, and the Patriots winning the East. And I have the Chargers and the Browns sneaking in the playoffs in the wildcard round. So basing it upon home field advantage, I think the Chiefs get the playoff home field advantage. I do think that they're good enough to do that. And I think that once again, it's a toss-up in the NFC. But I will go with the New Orleans Saints for one more year. So I don't think the home field advantage changes in this year's scene. I know that's probably pretty crazy. But then I think the Saints and the Vikings get a bye. And so that leaves the Cowboys and the Panthers and the Rams and the Seahawks. So let's say the Seahawks play the Cowboys. Toss up there. Panthers and Rams. I think the Rams get through. Let's say for kicks and giggles, the Cowboys beat the Seahawks again. So then that leaves us with the Cowboys and the Vikings and the Rams and the Saints. The rematch, I think the Saints get the better of them. I think the Vikings get the best of the Cowboys. So I have the Vikings and the Saints in the NFC Championship game. The rematch of the Miracle in Minnesota, and I think the Vikings go to the Super Bowl this year. I think that they are a good enough squad to make a run, and I'm just kind of going against the grain. Maybe I'm not 100% on board with these, but we'll see. NFC champ, I'll put the Vikings here, just for my keeping. Vikings. AFC champ, so how I see the playoffs happening, I have the Chiefs with home field advantage. I have the Patriots with a bye, clearly, because they have the easiest division in the NFL, in my opinion. So then that leaves you with the Texans, Browns, Ravens, Chargers. Let's say for kicks and giggles that the Texans are the 3 seed and they play the Chargers. I think the Texans get through there. Ravens and Browns in a divisional matchup. I think the Browns get the better of the division-winning Ravens, even though I do pick the Ravens to win that division. So then you have Browns and Texans. I think the Texans get by the Browns. Oh, no, that's not right. The Browns would have to play the Patriots. The Texans would have to play the Chiefs. No, because the Browns would have to play the Chiefs if I pick them as a 4 seed. So I think the Chiefs would beat the Browns, and I do think that the Patriots beat the Texans. And a rematch for going to the Super Bowl, I think the Chiefs beat the Patriots. So I have the Chiefs against the Vikings for the Super Bowl. Little semblance happening here. Let me make sure I'm right on this. But Super Bowl 4, which was exactly it's exactly going to be 40 years since the last one. Okay, so if you're looking symbolism here, let me make sure that I'm on here. So Super Bowl 4, you have Len Dawson and the Chiefs taking down the Vikings in the Super Bowl. So this is not just because I want this to happen. I actually went through and was just kind of, playing this out in my head. But I do think that this is a possibility. The Vikings were favored by 13 points in this game, and Len Dawson and the Chiefs beat the Vikings in the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 4. I could see that same game happening 40 years later. I don't think the Vikings would be favored, but I do think that the Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year. With the timeline of Patrick Mahomes and with where the rest of the guys are at in their career, if their defense does enough to hold off the other people, which I do think they could do, I think the Chiefs win the Super Bowl this year. So maybe Patrick doesn't have an MVP season, but he has enough of a good season to where he wins the Super Bowl and him and his team win the Super Bowl. So there's my pick. I know a lot of people here are going to be really disappointed because I live in Kansas City and they're going to be like, well, you jinxed us. I just believe that they're the best team in the NFL. I think Tom Brady honestly thinks about retirement at the end of the year. We'll do some hot takes next week as far as some bold predictions for the year. But, I have Rams, Vikings, Saints, Cowboys as winners. Chiefs, Ravens, Texans, Patriots as the division winners. And then I have the Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs, against the Minnesota Vikings 40 years later, almost to the day. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. You guys let me know down below who your division winners are. Please do let me know what you think about some of those crazy things that I'm saying on here, because it really is. It's you just blindly make picks, and I think that those are teams that are ready to make big moves. So I put online on the Facebook page. Please do like it. Classic Plastic Podcast. Let me shoot over here to it. Here it is. We're at 240 likes on here, so please do drop a like over here as well. I asked you guys earlier in the week to send me your fantasy teams, and to look through some of y'all's fantasy teams, because I did mine last week. So Jake, who's a good friend of mine, sent me this he commented on the page. So if you're on YouTube, you can do that as well. We have his roster, and so he's going to have me look through it and give him my thoughts on it. So Deshaun Watson, clearly a great pick. I think he's one of those guys, the second best young quarterback in the NFL. So no issue there. Tyreek Hill, great player, downfield threat at every play. I don't think we've seen a lot of players like him. Williams from the Chargers, one of those guys that could pop. Could be one of those guys that, could have a breakout season for them. And so I think they really need that to stick around. Todd Gurley, what are you going to get with him? He is an explosive player and a very gifted player. But is he one of those guys that, with his knee injury off of last year, is he going to be healthy enough to be that biggest difference maker this year? I would guess yes, because I think the Rams are good enough to win that division again. But then Marlon Mack, I think Indianapolis now with Andrew Luck being gone, is really going to have a great year for them to win some games. He is the type of guy, which clearly, they still have a great offensive line. So I think Marlon Mack could have a great season, so fantasy sleeper type thing. But I think he's a good running back for them. Jason Witten, don't know if you can look at that bald head of his now. He got out of the booth and he shaved his head. Can't expect him to do a lot on the field. He's probably going to be the starting tight end for the Cowboys. But, at his age, getting back out there might take him a few games to get used to it. But he'll catch some touchdowns this year, and maybe in a week that you guys need him to catch a touchdown. So decent pick there, as long as you didn't reach on him. Leonard Fournette, great pick. One of those guys that can get the job done for Jacksonville. I kind of slided them a little bit. I think they just missed the playoffs. I think the Browns and the Chargers are good enough to sneak in the wild card, but I think it comes down to the final week with the Jags as well, because nobody else from the East is getting in there. So, yeah, the only other team from the South could be the Jags. So, I kind of feel bad for not putting them in, but I do think that they could be a close to playoff team this year, just maybe getting edged out by the Browns and the Chargers. So then, you see Sammy Watkins down there, the Kansas City wide receiver. One of those guys that's going to get some balls, clearly because of Patrick Mahomes. But, maybe not as big of a downfield threat as your boy up here, Tyreek, but still a good solid pick. For the rest of his team, Kyler Murray. Don't know if this is a keeper league or not, but if it is, great pick. If it's not, and you think that he could just, take off and maybe on the off chance that Deshaun Watson, God forbid, gets hurt, Kyler Murray's a great pick because he's going to have to do everything for that Arizona offense. Jones Jr. from the Lions, another toss-up, but, one of those guys that on a bye week, a guy that could come in and get you 12, 13 points where you need to get into a playoff situation. Like that pick a lot, especially on the bench. Kareem Hunt, obviously, not going to have him for a while, but I also made this same pick in another one of my drafts where, you have the opportunity coming down the stretch to where you get a fresh running back. I know he'll be splitting carries with Nick Chubb, but Kareem Hunt could have a big late half of the season here. And then Delaney Walker, good tight end. I would start Delaney Walker over Jason Witten. Just my thoughts. Unless you have some emotional attachment to Jason Witten, I would start Delaney Walker. Clearly, not just because projections, but just because he's probably going to get a lot more balls based upon Marcus Mariota and or Ryan Tannehill, whoever they play. It could get him the ball more. And then Delaney Walker, he's the type of guy that they like going down the seam in the red zone, and he's going to catch a lot of passes, I think, that score more than Jason Witten, who's probably going to pick up 10 to 12 yards each time he catches it. Mason Crosby, old kicker, good player. One of those guys that, kickers are so interchangeable, it doesn't necessarily matter, but Mason Crosby, good kicker. If you want one of my pieces of advice for fantasy kickers, I would always go for somebody who kicks indoors. Even though Mason Crosby is a very good kicker, I always go for the indoor kickers. And yes, Mason Crosby is in the division with the Lions and the Vikings, where he can kick indoors sometimes. So not a terrible pick there. Obviously projected 8 points his first week. And then you have the best defense in the league in Chicago, obviously taking on Green Bay. So it will be a tough one for them for the opener. But one of those things where, I like the Chicago defense and what they do. And so, yeah, I think that's a good solid pick. So sorry, I hit the wrong button there. But a good solid pick there, and I appreciate Jake sending those over to have me look at those. And then I want to do one more thing because we are getting close to the NFL season. And since I am currently only doing Friday podcasts, which that could always change. So please let me know if you guys want that to change. But only one podcast a week right now. I'm going to go ahead and pick week 1 for the NFL regular season as far as for this game right here. Green Bay and Chicago coming up on Thursday night. The kickoff of the big season here in the NFL. I think it's 100. So, kind of the nostalgic Packers versus Bears. You can see this is on oddshark.com is what I use here. Packers at Bears. You can see the predicted score here. Chicago -3. I do believe that Chicago wins this game by more than 3 points. I think they come out and they make a statement early that, yes, Aaron Rodgers, you are who you are, but, yes, we have the best defense in the league. So that's where I'm at, and that's really the podcast for today. I wanted to get through the division winners. I've liked those a lot. Maybe the Vikings are a stretch to make it to the Super Bowl, but, there's always something where you're like, I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it sounds like it could. And, I see right here the Vikings are 3.5-point favorites at home against the Falcons in week 1. So I will make some picks next week. Looking forward to some of that as well. If you guys please would share this video around, subscribe on YouTube. 100 subscribers is the goal. And then also on Facebook, let's make a goal for this season. Let's try and get to 400 likes. That's a lot. That's 160 more than we currently have. So please do share this around. I know you guys appreciate maybe some of the effort that goes into this. It's fun for me to continue to do a little bit of this as well. So please do let me know if you're enjoying the content in the video as well. And you don't have to wait much longer. The NFL is almost here, 8 days away. Which, by the way, I didn't get to give this to you. I'm almost wrapping this up. This weekend, Boise State at Florida State -6.5. I got Boise State in that one. If you're out there in Vegas wanting to make some picks, I got Boise State +6.5 at Florida State. Oregon versus Auburn at Dallas. I got Oregon +4. Give me the Ducks. So yeah, if you're looking for some picks there, I think that college football tomorrow going to be a great time. Enjoy your long weekend. Hopefully you'll get to go out and fish or hang out with some buddies, go golf, do something. Just get your mind off of work. Enjoy God's beauty and creation. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast. Like I said, share this around. Really appreciate all the support that you guys give me. And I will see you next week right here on the Classic Plastic Podcast.